In the 1960s. It's a great time to be living. We had old favorites like the Andy Griffith Show, Bewitched, and, of course, Gilligan's Island, which was everyone's favorite. It may not have been the most realistic of the bunch, but it still won over a lot of people. And still has a strange place in popular culture. Why? Even with its flaws, Gilligan's Island was a pretty good show. It took viewers to a world where coconut radios made sense but boat fixes didn't. It did this by using silly jokes and situations. Not really. And to be honest, that's part of the charm. Even more people loved it because of the mistakes and goofs. Today, we're going to talk about some of the show's funniest and weirdest mistakes that you probably didn't even notice. Let's start. A quick background. I think it would be fun to talk about how this wonderfully weird show came to be before we put on some sunscreen and watch the bloopers. The first episode of Gilligan's Island aired on September 26, 1964. It aired on CBS for 3 years, ending in 1967. People who made it include Sherwood Schwartz, who also made the Brady Bunch. So Sherwood says, the show was kind of meant to be a social experiment in secret. The idea was easy to grasp. When they get stuck on a desert island, a bunch of very different people have to work together. It makes you think of Lord of the Flies, doesn't it? Thank goodness, things never got that bad. Instead, things quickly and seriously went from being funny to being very stupid. What is the premise? Easy. 7 people are stuck on an exotic island in the middle of nowhere after their 3-hour tour on the SS Minnow goes off track. Almost every episode was about how funny it was when they tried to leave and failed over and over again. Does that mean that 7 grown-ups don't have any extra brain cells? In any case, the group was made up of types that were easy to recognize. There's Bob Denver as Gilligan, the second mate who makes a mess of things. The captain, the skipper, who is rough but lovely. His coconut-powered ideas make him pretty much the only person who can think logically. Next is Ginger, the beautiful Hollywood beauty. Maria, the nice girl next door. They were Thurston Howell III and his wife Lovey. They were rich and out of touch, but they brought bags for a weekend trip. A big part of what made the show work was how much each character fit their image. And to be honest, that was kind of the point. They were used as living jokes, with their quirks played up for laughs. And the plan worked. The show was a hit with crowds, even though critics gave it mixed reviews at first. It wasn't very highbrow TV, but it was enjoyable. This was one reason why people loved it so much. The show wasn't trying to be anything else but a fun, strange thing. This is why it gained a strong following of fans. Fans could still watch the show through reruns, spin-offs, cartoons, and even reunion movies after it was cancelled. Before we start, here's something fun. Did you know that the Professor and Marianne almost didn't make it into the beloved theme song? That's right. In early versions, it just finished with "and the rest." But because so many people didn't like it, the beginning was re-recorded to include them. Also, did you know that the SS Minnow was named for Newton Minnow, the former head of the FCC who said that TV was a huge wasteland? We like that sly jab. Anyway, let's jump right into all the chaos and facts you missed now that we're back in the 1960s. Mrs. Howell opens her eyes while she's still asleep. Just being honest, Gilligan's Island was never meant to be a great show. We might not have taken it seriously if it was. Instead, it liked silly, slapstick, and sometimes completely crazy things. That's why we have to start with the stupidest mistake. In the episode called Man with a Net, an odd butterfly collector named Lord Beasley comes to the island. He's more interested in his own hobbies than in saving the group that got stuck there. He gives the drifters a drink made from fermented berries right before he goes. He doesn't know it, though, but it has a strong enticing effect. The castaways don't know what's going on until they drink it. But this is where things get a little interesting. Natalie Schafer plays Mrs. Howell, and she opens her eyes by accident, even though she's meant to be out like the others. Be sure to pay close attention. It happens so fast that you might not even notice it, but if you're really sharp-eyed, you might. Most likely, Natalie thought the cameras had stopped rolling, but that's just a cute quirk that makes the show even better. The boat changes all the time. This one's for boat lovers and people who are into consistency. Have you ever thought about how the SS Minnow seems to be having trouble figuring out who it is? At the beginning of the movie, as the Minnow leaves the harbor, it leans sharply to the left, as if it were predicting the chaos that is to come. It looks like it's already halfway through a disaster movie because it's fighting the waves. But boom! At the end of the credits, She's standing straight, balanced, and calm, and she's sailing like a pro. There is no lean to be seen. Did someone off-screen give her a spinal adjustment? And now for the really cool part. You can tell that the boat used in the harbor scenes that are calm is different from the one used in the storm scenes. Other than the size and shape, it has a totally different structure. The storm boat looks bigger and rougher. It looks like it was made for drama, while the harbor Mino is smaller, smoother, and most likely just a normal charter boat. What did happen then? Did they switch boats in the middle of a storm? Before it sank, did the Minnow change into something stronger, like a Pokemon? Or was the person in charge of continuity just out for lunch that day? It's likely a simple answer. They thought no one would notice when they put together stock footage of a storm with real shots of the hired Minnow. Still, here we are after 60 years. There are unknown people in the opening scenes. While the credits are still rolling, the camera moves across the harbor as the SS Minnow pulls away from the dock. And if you stop at the right time, you'll notice something strange. There are two unknown people standing in the background. They're not one of the 7 castaways, and the show never talks about them. Fans of the show for a long time and people who pay close attention to consistency will remember this quick moment for a long time. This mistake is very interesting because it went unnoticed for a long time. People couldn't stop or rewatch scenes when the show first came out. People were probably focused on the funny story and missed little visual details like this. Now that DVDs, streaming services, and HD remasters are more popular, fans can stop, rewind, and look at every frame. Before, this tiny moment was lost in the blur of a moving shot. Now, it stands as a classic example of how modern technology has turned watching TV for fun into an in-depth frame-by-frame study. During the episode, Gilligan's socks disappear. This is a consistency mistake that you might not see at first, but it's hard to get rid of once you do. We're going to talk about Gilligan's socks, or the puzzle of the socks that keep going missing. Gilligan's famous long socks can be seen in a number of shows, especially during intense chase scenes in the jungle. This is where things get weird, though. At first glance, those socks make him look like he's ready for a casual walk. In an instant, they're gone like magic. As soon as the camera changes to a different view, Gilligan's legs are seen without socks. Now, this happens more than once in the series. It's easy to think it was just a mistake made on set, but the real reason might be more useful than we think. Think about this. It must be very hot on set, so Bob Denver, being the brave man that he was, took off his socks between takes to cool off. That's something we could definitely see happening, and it makes sense. The man was shooting for hours in the tropics, and those socks? Not very good for breathing. But here's the catch. The socks are back on in the next picture. That being said, they aren't even always wrong. Most of the time, the sockless shots happen in the middle of the action. The next thing you know, Gilligan is running through the jungle with his socks on. He's running barefoot the next second. After that, bam, they're back. Take a look at this unsolved riddle. In other words, a continuity mistake. Anyway, Gilligan's Island fans who like strange details thought this disappearing sock act was one of the funniest and most obvious mistakes. This is the kind of thing that makes the show more interesting. It's those little flaws that make us laugh as we watch the castaways deal with all sorts of crazy situations. What about the professor's coconut radio that keeps going off? What the coconut radio is all about. The professor, who is known for making clever things out of coconuts and bamboo, was able to make a radio that worked so the castaways could stay in touch. But this important piece of equipment seems to have a thought of its own because it moves around a lot during the series. 1 minute it's safe inside the bamboo hut, out of the weather, and the next it's on the beach, subject to sand and waves for no apparent reason. It sometimes even shows up deep inside a cave. There is a contradiction that has led to very important inquiries, like, did the radio grow legs? Or maybe the professor came up with a way to move off-screen. We're not serious. This is likely because of mistakes made during production, which we know. Still, it makes the show funnier in a way that wasn't meant to be there. But is the joke still funny when equipment from behind the scenes shows up? Equipment for the crew shows up by mistake. Sneaky stuff from behind the scenes often ends up in the final cut of a show. Someone really did leave a coffee cup in the middle of a Game of Thrones feast. That's a dream world worth a lot of money. Crashed because of a bad coffee run. Beloved. What about Gilligan's Island? It did have some of these production problems, but they happened a long time before they became famous on the internet as memes. If you look more closely at a few shows, you'll see shadows that don't belong to any of the castaways. It's a loud mic sometimes. Sometimes, you'll see the outline of a camera operator just out of view. Don't blink and miss these either, because you can't take your eyes off of them once you see them. One of the most obvious mistakes is in a scene set in the jungle at night. Even though the scene is supposed to be dark and spooky, you can see the bright outline of a studio light shining through the palm leaves. No moonlight here, people. Just a big flood lamp in the backlit. Working extra hours. The fourth wall is broken right there. The illusion of a deserted island falls apart, and you remember that the whole thing was filmed on a Hollywood set. There was no tropical breeze or crashing waves. There was just a set in California that was very well lit and had some plants in pots and a smart camera angle. What's going on with the box full of clothes? Have you ever thought about why Ginger brought so many dresses on her 3-hour tour? We're not just talking about a few swanky looks. She came with sequins, feathers, high heels, gloves, fur wraps, and more items than you could put together a red carpet event on the beach. It looks like she was getting ready for the Oscars instead of a normal boat ride to see the sights. That's not the end of the puzzle, though. Also, Marianne's wardrobe is surprisingly varied for someone who was meant to be on a short trip. Lovely clothes. There are crop tops with ties, clean jeans and skirts that are ironed to a crisp. Somehow, everything stays clean even after jungle walks, rainstorms and building bamboo furniture. Even the Howells are always wearing new clothes. Lovey seems to have brought her whole Palm Beach closet, complete with matched hats, pearls and silk gloves. Mr. Howells brought his signature collection of blazers and neckties. Not even a parasol. Did they also rent a fashion truck with the minnow? We only have one question. For a 3-hour trip, who packs like this? Did they know they were going to get lost in some way? Or maybe the professor used palm fronds and static energy to make a portable dry cleaner. Some fans think that wardrobe consistency wasn't a big deal for the people who worked on the show. At the time, most people who watched didn't notice or care. This seems odd to more than just fans. Dawn Wells, who plays Marianne, has made fun of the clothes thing too. But now that I look at it, it's one of those hilariously obvious mistakes that makes the show fun. Changing the shape of the island. People often say that the island's plan is all over the place and looks like a bad dream. The lake might show up on the left in one episode. It's on the right in another one. The huts are sometimes tucked away deep in the bush. Sometimes they're right next to the beach, which is very handy. There are times when it seems like the island is always changing, like in the Bermuda Triangle. In any case, these differences are due to the way the show was produced. The Laguna was built on the backlit of the CBS Studio Center in Los Angeles. Its look changed based on the camera angle and set changes. Also, different real-life places were used for different scenes. Malawa Beach on Kauai, Hawaii, was used to film the pilot. Sandy Cay near the Bahamas was used in the opening scenes of the first season, and Mokoloi, Coconut Island, near Oahu was used in later seasons. These different filming sites made it hard to get a clear picture of the island's geography. Lastly, the maps of the island in the show changed over time. The island's layout changes in shows like Forward March and Man with a Net, where the waterways bend in different directions. In Splashdown, a map from space leaves out important elements like forests and mountains. Wildlife that doesn't fit there. The island was meant to be unexplored and empty, a paradise away from people. But over and over, the castaways keep running into strange animals that have no business being on a remote tropical island. There are so many animals on the island that it looks like a zoo. There are monkeys swinging through the trees and tarantulas curled up on the sand. That's not all. The castaways meet an alligator on the beach in one scene, which makes them feel a little uncomfortable. And to make things even sillier, a lion shows up. It's interesting to see, but it makes you wonder where these animals came from. Was there some kind of strange zoo shipwreck? Did the island have a secret place where strange animals could live? Or did they live in a secret wildlife area that no one ever told anyone about? What is the more likely reason? Stock footage. A lot of these animals came from other CBS shows and were used in this one. To save money on new video, the network often used stock footage of animals from other shows, like Lassie, The Brady Bunch, and other adventure-themed shows. Because of this, Gilligan's Island didn't always feel like an empty island, sometimes it felt like a wild country. What was even stranger was that the animals often just showed up out of nowhere, like they were waiting for their cue to show up. One minute, there are no signs of any wildlife, and then all of a sudden, a strange animal shows up and fits right in with its surroundings. Lions don't normally live on tropical islands, or any islands for that matter. In fact, the lion story is one of the most well-known examples of how unrealistic the show is. Cast members acting out of character. Don't you love it when a star does something different? It just serves as a reminder that behind the playing, there is a real person. There are only a few great parts of the show where the players almost fall apart. However, it's pretty funny once you understand it. For instance, Bob, who plays Gilligan, liked to grin or sneak a look off camera a lot during bloopers. In one scene, you can see him trying not to laugh while the captain yells at him. You should pay close attention so you don't miss it. Let's talk about a small but surprising thing that has to do with Bob. The wedding band Gilligan wore. There's a funny story about turtle races on the island in the episode called They're Off and Running. When Gilligan lifts his hand, a shiny gold wedding ring on Bob's finger can be seen. What's wrong? Gilligan is famous for not being with anyone. There was no talk of a sweetheart back home, no island romance, though some fans privately liked him with Mary Ann, and no history with a wife. How then do we understand it? The ring wasn't really a part of the character, though. Bob's real wedding band was on, and the wardrobe staff didn't care to tell him to take it off. Or maybe he said no. Cast comments and trivia books say that Bob wore it on set the whole time the show was airing. It got by editors more than once. Fans will be able to tell this show is a mistake because the camera stays on it for just long enough. Did the islands get phone service? In fact, this did happen. In a later episode of the season, the actors almost used the professor's homemade transmitter to make a phone call to the mainland. It's clear that it doesn't work. However, it brings up a great question. Why didn't they build a radio tower years ago if they could call out? It was always just handy enough for the story to make sense, but not always reliable enough that fans would yell at their screens. Indeed, a lot of admirers felt the same way about Gilligan's hat swap in its third season. There is a clear narrative mistake in the episode Our Vines Have Tender Apes. Gilligan is wearing the captain's hat as he walks off a cliff. The next thing we see him doing, though, is swinging from a branch with his usual white hat back on. Did he use some of that strange island magic to do this? The unknown pilot. Did you know that the show's pilot episode, called Marooned, was made in November 1963 but didn't air until October 16, 1992? There were big differences between this pilot and the show that finally aired. Ginger and the Professor were played by two different actors, Kit Smythe and John Gabriel, respectively. On top of that, Mary Ann's identity was missing. That role went to a figure named Bunny, who was played by Nancy McCarthy. In this picture, both Ginger and Bunny were secretaries, which is different from later pictures where Ginger was a movie star and Mary Ann was a farm girl. The pilot also didn't have the famous theme song, it had a calypso-style song instead. These changes were made after CBS looked over the pilot and suggested that the cast and relationships between characters be changed. Because of this, some parts had to be recast and rethought before the show's official start in 1964. Taking pictures during an important event. The last day of shooting for the Gilligan's Island pilot happened at the same time as a major event in American history. The murder of President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963. The cast and crew got the sad news while they were filming the last shots at Honolulu Harbor. Like you might expect, the event made the producers feel sad. But despite the problems, the team finished the parts that had to be done. It's interesting that the American flag is flown at half-staff in the pilot's opening sequence, which shows the SS Minnow leaving the harbor. This is a subtle reference to the national tragedy. The real name of the captain. Another fun fact is that fans often call the figure the skipper, but his real name is Jonas Grummy. This information is given in the first episode, Two on a Raft, when the castaways are first shown. Even though his full name is mentioned early on, the show mostly uses his nickname and rarely uses it in later episodes. Alan Hale Jr. plays the skipper, who is the powerful but kind-hearted captain of the SS Minnow and is often in charge of the group's survival attempts on the island. His time in the Navy is sometimes mentioned, which gives his role as boss among the castaways more depth. Talk about Gilligan's first name. Talking about names, what is Gilligan's first name? People have been arguing about this question for decades. Gilligan is only known by his last name throughout the show. But did you know that Sherwood, who created the show, meant for Gilligan's first name to be Willie? This information was never shown on the show, and Bob thought that Gilligan was the character's first name. Within the series, this problem was never fixed, and fans are still arguing about the character's full name. But we think that this lack of clarity adds a mysterious element to Gilligan's past, which fits with the show's fun and silly tone. The problem with the coconut cup. For the first season, real coconut shells were used as drinking glasses to make the show seem more real. But the natural porousness of coconut shells made things hard to do. The cups would soak up drinks and get soggy, so they couldn't be used more than once. Because of this issue, the production team had to change the real coconut cups with ceramic copies that kept the desired look and were more durable. So those coconut cups that look cool that you see on the show are all fake. Anyway, in addition to making filming scenes with drinking dishes easier, this change also helped the show look more consistent. Concerns about Louise's character, Tina Louise, who played Ginger Grant, was unhappy with the way her character was going at first, especially with the rise in sarcastic dialogue that wasn't fitting with the idea of a glamorous movie star. Her worries led the show's makers to talk to her, and Richard Donner was hired to replace the original director. With Richard's help, Ginger's character went back to how it was supposed to be, which was more in line with Louise's standards. This change not only made Louise's time on set better, but it also helped the show as a whole because it made the characters work better together. This is the Harlem Globetrotters. Go see. A made-for-TV movie called The Harlem Globetrotters on Gilligan's Island came out in 1981, adding to the Gilligan's Island series. In this movie, the famous basketball team crashed on the island and joined the other people who were trapped there in a story about a crazy doctor and his robots. In the show's climax, the Globetrotters played a basketball game against the robots that showed how good they were at sports and comedy. This movie stood out because it brought back the original cast and added a new character, a lodge manager, who showed that the island's story was progressing. The movie also added a new part to the Gilligan's Island story, which shows how popular the show is still today. And its ability to tell unique stories. Now for the biggest mistake that you probably didn't even notice. The biggest mistake of all time. The show Gilligan's Island has a lot of silly mistakes and consistency problems, like socks that disappear and huts that teleport. But the mistake that's built right into the show's idea might be the biggest of all. They never get off the island, even though they have dozens of chances to do so. Take a step back. The whole point of the show is that 7 castaways are stuck on an unknown desert island with no way to get in touch with anyone else. That's the stress. That's why we watch. Still, people and gifts keep finding their way to this so-called Lost Island week after week, episode after episode. Without any problems. Cosmonauts land there by chance. There, crazy experts build secret labs. Pilots land too quickly. People making films get there by boat. And sometimes Santa Claus shows up. Not joking. It is very clear for them to receive love letters, newspaper clippings, and even radio programs. They have technology that works. And throw fancy parties. They even put on a film event at one point. And still, no help? This is most famously shown in the episode The Postman Cometh, in which the castaways get a bag full of mail from the outside world, including letters from home. An unknown mailman finds the secret island some way. But he doesn't send help, instead, he just brings the mail and leaves. It's so crazy that even the characters look confused for a moment before brushing it off and going about their day. In The Friendly Physician, another episode, a crazy doctor takes his submarine to the island to sedate and kidnap the castaways and then brings them back to his lab to do some strange experiments on them. He has high-tech ways of communicating. Full movement and a way to get out. Once more, no one thinks to just follow him. Fans have known this for a long time. People joke about how many times the castaways could have greeted a guest or followed them off the island on Reddit and fan forums. Some ideas say that the writers were making fun of serialist logic on purpose. Some people, including us, just think the show was never meant to be taken seriously. It was just a crazy picture with real people. And in some ways, that's true. But even in ridiculous comedy, there's usually a way for things to make sense. No one on the Flintstones asks why dinosaurs are used as vacuum cleaners. But there are rules in the world. That line of thinking falls apart when we realize that they were never really alone in Gilligan's Island. The door was wide open. They didn't walk through it at all. Why did they not leave? Well, in part because of how comedies were run in the 1960s. Network shows were built around a reset button back then. Every episode had to end with the same situation, setting, characters, and interactions. It was easy to bring the show to other places. Watch again. Or start in the middle of the season. If there had been a rescue, the show would have had to stop or start over from scratch. But that doesn't take away from how funny the main comedy is. There were escape paths, technology, and people visiting these characters. The writing was the only thing that stopped them. Now that we look back, this huge mistake is what makes the show so much fun to analyze. It asks you to believe it, and then challenges you to find the holes in its reasoning. It looks more and more crazy the more you look at it. It's a standard example of TV that is so bad it's good. But for fans, that's what makes it fun. You don't expect Gilligan's Island to be realistic when you watch it. You watch it for the funny pratfalls and the coconut radios. Yes, the silly story holes that made the show memorable in some way. It's clear what all of these mistakes mean. Gilligan's Island was a mess, but in the cutest way possible. It didn't have to make sense or have perfect consistency. It leaned into the mess. In all honesty, that's part of the fun of going back. Which of these mistakes did you already know? Say what we missed in the space below. Thanks for seeing.